Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Security comes not from declarations, but from cooperation. That was the message from Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk after the Coalition of the Willing summit in Paris. The group made up of around 35 countries committed to supporting Ukraine militarily and planning its long-term security agreed to hold its first multinational military exercises in Poland this autumn, while stepping up preparations for future security guarantees. And joining us now is Monika Sus, Associate Professor at the Polish Academy of Sciences. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
Good morning.
So, declarations, we need cooperation. Let's talk about that cooperation and jump right into this idea. I mean, for many, they will see this coalition of the willing. They won't be unfamiliar with this. So let's just talk about how significant in your mind this has become if we compare it to NATO, these decisions and announcements from the last couple of days.
I mean, of course, we cannot compare this coalition to NATO, right? Because NATO, is an international alliance made and designed to provide security for the transatlantic alliance. And we are here talking about the coalition of willing countries, as you mentioned, 35 countries from Europe, but also beyond Europe, that came together to basically think about security guarantees for Ukraine once we have the ceasefire. So it is a meaningful coalition, don't get me wrong here, but of course it is not something very permanent. However, with the decision that you just described in Paris from yesterday, we see that these countries, mostly the biggest countries within the coalition, Poland including, are moving towards making the coalition to something, let's say, more deployable when we have the ceasefire in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's also an interesting point, isn't it? Because you said, no, it's not NATO, but in terms of actually now coming together, these multinational exercises on this coalition has never been done before. And just give us your take on why this is happening now and why Poland as a host to this.
I mean, there are a few reasons why this is happening now. One of them definitely is, let's say, the general transatlantic climate. And by that, I mean a very, evident push by the United States to Europe, to take the responsibility for securing peace in Ukraine in our own hands. So here the message is clear, the Europeans are on it. And of course, for that to happen, we will need at some point the strategic enablers from the United States. But still, we are in the lead of the coalition. And here the message, not only to Vladimir Putin, but also to Donald Trump from the Europeans seems to be very clear. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is also definitely the situation that we are facing with Russia and Ukraine. So there is no ceasefire, to be happening anytime soon. I think that is very important when we talk about, these exercises. But Russia strengthens signaling, against NATO allies. Poland is one of the countries that have been threatened by Russia, for the better part of the last 4 years. But we are getting stronger signals that Russia might attack in any form one of the NATO members. That's something that you hear coming from intelligence communities quite often in the recent time. So that's also something that I read as the coalition answers, basically, to this stronger posture that the Russian Federation is now projecting. And finally, the third reason that I see is also very important is that, after a couple of months and actually years of this coalition being something very let's say preparatory, we are stepping into the next phase. And in order to be able to indeed provide security guarantees for Ukraine when we have the ceasefire, I highlight this again, we need to be ready. And in order to be ready, we need to exercise together. So these are the reasons why we are having, or we are about to have these exercises now. Why Poland? I think the reason is quite obvious. Poland is the biggest hub of Ukraine's help, both logistically, but also, let's say, politically. And the help basically goes through Poland. So I think Poland is the natural candidate in order to host these exercises. And on top of that, we also have the facilities. We have the joint command in Bydgoszcz, and we have been hosting the forces from allied countries for quite some time now.
And I think also on that deployment and these exercises that will happen in the autumn in Poland, primarily will be British and French forces included. And I think also interesting, the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has said that he's actually also looking at a possibility of maybe permanent British and French troops to also serve alongside and stay in Poland alongside U.S. forces. So tell us a bit more about this. How significant would such a step be in the future?
Well, I mean, it's definitely significant that these exercises are about to happen. So that's definitely a good first step. On the permanent, let's say, transition of these forces, we still don't know enough. And of course, this information is certainly classified. But, you know, on the broader picture, and Poland, the Polish governments for the last 10 years, basically, have been trying to convince allies to strengthen their military presence on the eastern flank. So I understand these decisions to be very much in line with what the Polish government has wanted, basically, from the allies, and definitely from the Polish perspective, from the perspective of the national security, but also again from the perspective of strengthening the eastern flank. Having permanent presence of British, French, or U.S. forces is definitely a very strong signal that we can basically send towards Moscow.
Yeah, and also an interesting signal to Washington. Now, if we're looking at these exercises, is this, as we already talked about before in the past with other experts, these transatlantic tensions remain. So what signal does this coalition, these exercises, send now to Washington? Is this a replacement? Is this something complementary? How will Washington interpret all these movements?
I think that here there are like two main factors that I see. One is definitely something that we already been talking about, and you mentioned this too. It is a signal to Washington that Europeans are getting their act together, that we are able to basically secure stability and security of the European continent when not without the American forces. Then at least, primarily via the European forces. So that's definitely something that, well, not only Donald Trump, but also the previous presidents of the United States wanted Europe to do. So that's, I think, the one message here. And the other message concerns Poland, because Poland, as perhaps some of you know, has been quite reluctant to, for example, make the decision and announce that it will send troops to Ukraine when the ceasefire is reached within the coalition of the willing that we are here talking about. And again, there's no decision and there's no sign of any decision from the Polish government to send these troops. But the very fact that the Polish troops will be exercising together with Brits and French forces also sends a signal that the participation of Poland is actually getting stronger in this coalition.
And you touched on it a little bit. I want to ask you a bit further, because I mean, this concept also mentioned by Prime Minister Tusk is preparing the idea of real security guarantees for Ukraine. So we've had that talk before. What does that mean realistically? I mean, as we said, troops in Ukraine, something else, because we've heard this now again. So how do you interpret his preparing for real security guarantees for Ukraine?
That's the most difficult question, I'd say, because on the one hand, as I said before, we don't see any readiness from Moscow to end the conflict, and the readiness for that has to come from Moscow, because Ukraine is ready to end the war, obviously. So that's the first, let's say, part of the equation. And the second part of the equation is indeed the question that you ask: what concretely the securing of Ukraine should mean when we have the ceasefire. And on that, again, I think there are only some general directions so far. We are definitely talking about putting European forces, and again without the Polish forces, but other European countries already announced their willingness to put boots on the ground in Ukraine when the conflict is frozen or ends. In order basically to increase the threshold for Moscow for any other attack on Ukrainian territory. Whether these guarantees will be enough to deter Moscow, that's an open question. But I think that for now, and this is something that Tusk also said very clearly yesterday, we should be focusing on convincing Moscow by strengthening our forces to basically step up to the negotiation table.
Yeah, and I think also in terms of, you said, the length of this war. I mean, after meeting, I believe, the NATO Secretary General Rutte and also President Zelensky, I think Tusk said that Russia will continue this war at least into the winter. Does that sort of infer from that there are no negotiations really planned? Is this going to carry on as an actual battlefield war, or is there still any off-ramp for any kind of negotiations? Just briefly before we close.
Sure. I mean, again, super difficult question. Well, I mean, for now, as I said, I don't really see a readiness from Russia to negotiate. But again, there are some channels open with Moscow, obviously, not the official ones, let's say, but the more covered ones. And I am hopeful that at some point Moscow will be ready to negotiate. Still, the only thing that we can do, realistically speaking, the Europeans, is to strengthen our forces and basically to deter Russia as strong as we can.
Right, and also with that missile coalition, 9 countries plus Ukraine ballistic missile shield, that's also an interesting story there that we'll cover as it develops. Look, thanks for all that. Really appreciate those insights. Professor Monika Sus, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.